Today I'm talking about borrowing, and my title is Look and Understand Before You Leap. Now understand my role in borrowing. I'm a lawyer. I'm engaged at times by condo corporations that are considering borrowing. And so I've frequently been brought in to talk to the board and to explain what borrowing might look like and compare it to what the other options are, possibly using the reserve fund or most likely a special levy. Okay? Also, I'm retained at times to come and talk to owners about these same things and explain what the options are, what different types of loans are available. And one of the things I often tell people is, please understand my role. In regards to this loan, whether you get one or not, I don't care. I really don't. But if you are going to proceed with a loan, my role is to make sure that you understand it and that it's done properly. Okay? All right, so let's talk about borrow. Now, I've used this little picture before, and I like it because it captures the essence of condominium living in the province. Now, to borrow or to levy, the underlying issues are often contentious. And this is something that we see going into consideration of a loan. Not all the time, but frequently. And it's not that the borrowing itself is contentious. Rather, it's the underlying need for the funds that are contentious. And this is something the board needs to know, because often a loan is required because there's not sufficient funds that have already been put aside. Often we're looking at years, if not decades, of a lack of maintenance, and those problems have come to roost. And now people are looking at, well, what have we seen? Whole-scale building envelope replacements, structural problems, right? And the reserve fund is worth $220,000 and the work is worth $3 million, right? And invariably in these situations, when people are fronted with that kind of a bill and that kind of financial reality, it's disconcerting and it's often contentious. And that's usually when I get asked to go to speak to owners about the obligations to maintain and repair. And we see conflict. And you probably have heard of situations like this. Well, why are we spending $3 million? My brother-in-law is and he says he can do it for $25,000, that kind of thing, right? And interesting, not all the time are those complaints actually unjustified. I have seen a couple of projects where they were looking at costs that ended up being unnecessary, and they were able to do it different ways. But when you're dealing with these things, it's important, because you're looking at borrowing a significant amount of money and locking the corporation into a significant liability and debt, the board needs to be clear about the need for it. They need to not only be able to justify it to the owners and explain it to the owners, but they have duties under Section 28 of the Act to act not just honestly and in good faith anymore, but they have to act reasonably and prudently. Okay? And so when you're talking about the need, these are things that require careful attention. Now, what is a condo loan? This is the first thing that people get off track on. This is different from typical financing, from a mortgage. And so one of the first things I explain to people is understand what condominium borrowing is and what it is not. We are talking about a loan to the corporation. The owner's condominium plan number, or condominium corporation number, The corporation, not the unit owners. The units are not liened. The units are not charged. The units are not mortgaged. Now, when a unit owner buys their unit, unless they have the ability to pay cash for their unit, they get a mortgage. They borrow from their lender, and that lender registers a charge called a mortgage, typically, against their unit. That mortgage gives the lender rights, and the rights which the lender has principally is a right of foreclosure or to force judicial sale. In essence, to take that unit and to either take it in satisfaction of the debt or to force its sale to pay the debt. Okay? Now, how is that type of loan different than a loan to the condo corporation? this is where I'm going to ask for volunteers. What's the difference? No assets. What do you mean there's no assets? We're looking with a multi-million-dollar corporation. What do you mean there's no assets? Okay? The corporation doesn't own the units. The corporation owns the common property. Can you foreclose on common property? Can you market it for sale? No, you can't. You know what? We've gone in and we've put tolls on either side of your hallways, and it'll now cost you $3 to use the elevator. You can't do that type of thing. It's not something that a lender can exert some security over, right? Now, sometimes there is. And there are some condo corporations that actually own units, and those units are actually marketable, right? But that is very, very rare. Like, for example, a unit owns a suite for the caretaker or something like that, or the site manager. But typically, the condo corporations don't have an asset. And so this is what makes condo borrowing non-traditional. It's atypical. And as a result, up until recently, you haven't had a lot of banks that were participating in the industry for this reason. When I first started looking at condo loans, it's probably about 15 years ago, my first response was, and I'll circle back to this point, boy, this is complex and this is a pain in the neck. Just special assess. And I've changed my tune on that, and I'll explain why. But at that point in time, I was seeing two lenders, both out of Ontario, Maxium Financial and Morrison. And since that time, you've now seen banks that are coming into it, okay? And the banks, we've seen Canadian Western Bank has actually acquired Maxium's business, so it's now Canadian Western Bank Maxium. We've seen BMO enter in a major way. And as of the last I heard, there was at least 2 or 3 other banks that we've seen that are entering. And so what this has done is you've now seen these industry participants are getting in, and that's a good thing. Because with more industry participation from banks, what's going to happen to the cost of borrowing? It's going down, okay? And so we see a lot more competition in rates than even in 5 years ago.